Bourbon a baby.
Hello, welcome to Bourbon and a Baby. My name is Jay, and I'm going to be doing something a little bit different in today's video. First off, Max isn't going to be joining us today because as much as I want Max to be into superhero movies, especially Batman because he's one of my favorites, Max is way too young to have watched and reviewed The Batman. This video is different than what I normally do on the channel, but I was watching The Batman the other night and I just felt compelled to want to talk about it. So I figured maybe I can start doing, maybe I'll do more, maybe who knows, maybe I won't, but maybe I can do a review while drinking bourbon and tie it into the channel here. So for The Batman, which is the movie I'll be reviewing here in a moment, I wanted to drink today. As I go through this review, I'm going to be drinking Blackened American Whiskey. This is a blend of straight whiskeys that then is sonically enhanced with Metallica music blaring at it. And the reason I chose this to talk about the Batman is mostly because of the name, Blackened. Batman is the Dark Knight, black. It's a very dark theme, so I figured that was fitting. So I'm going to be sipping along with some Blackened here as I take you through this review. First up, cheers everybody. That's so good. Very good. Okay, so The Batman. I go into this movie and I'm excited. One, Batman's probably my favorite superhero, let's be honest. I don't know, I've never actually sat down and kind of ranked them 1 to however many. But you know, in 1989 when the Michael Keaton Batman movie came out, that was kind of like prime for me as a kid. I was like 9 years old, 10 years old. I loved it, and I've loved Batman ever since. Batman, the animated series came out shortly after that too. So always been super into Batman. So pretty excited anytime there's a Batman movie that comes out. I'm gonna be there to watch it. But as I was watching the Batman, This isn't necessarily going to be a negative review, but man, there was a lot of things about the Batman that I'm just like, man, I have got to get this off my chest, which is why I'm making this video tonight. I want to hit you with a too long didn't watch right up front so I can tell you just kind of what my basic overall thought of this movie was. And overall, I thought this movie was like good and like weird and like bad, all kind of mixed into one. It was kind of like this. There are things that I like really liked and I thought was like a really cool, interesting take on this Batman world. And then there's things about this movie that I'm just like, what in the world is going on here? Like, what are they doing? It was just kind of like all over the map for me. So if I had to give it an ultimate overall like rating, I'm not raving about it. I don't think it's one of the best Batman movies ever made. And I don't think it's one of the worst Batman movies ever made. I think it's interesting. I think it's worth watching. But at the end of the day, it's not, like I said, it's not the best. It's not one of the best movies you'll ever see. So to break this movie down even further for you, first off, this movie is a commitment. It is just under 3 hours long. Now, I've watched 3-hour movies in the past and been really into them. I remember like, trying to think of some of the longer, the more famous 3-hour movies. The first one that comes to mind is like Watchmen. I remember Watchmen being super long, but that movie held my interest through the entire thing. It did feel long, but it didn't necessarily feel like it was 3 hours long. So like, I can handle a 3-hour movie. I can handle that commitment. During this movie, during the Batman, I was just like, man, wrap it up, B. The wrap it up lights were shining. I'm like, let's get this story rolling, because it just seemed like there were a couple different spots where it's just like, check your watch, like, let's go. What is this necessary? So yeah, be prepared for that commitment. And then like the other thing, and obviously I picked this up really early, and what I think the best superhero comic book movies or whatever do is they walk a fine line. The best of them, they walk this fine line in appealing to the adults, the people like me watching it, the appeal to the fanboys, you know, the people that love the comics, but also appeal to kids. And you know, maybe there's a lot of adult content, but they also and not that they're doing it for purposes other than making more money, but it's nice to appeal to kids, even if it's just because you want to sell more action figures or cars or whatever. But I think personally, in my opinion, the best of the best superhero and comic book movies kind of walk a line between that. Marvel, a lot of the Marvel movies tend to be a little bit more geared towards kids, although some of them can be darker here and there. But so I think the Marvel movies do it relatively well. I think the perfect example of this is the Michael Keaton original Batman movie. Not original Batman movie, but the first Batman movie, the first Michael Keaton Batman movie, the 1989 Batman movie. It was dark, it was gritty, it was adult oriented, but it also had stuff in there that kids could watch. It wasn't too violent and too gory for kids. It wasn't too dark and ominous for kids. The Batmobile was awesome, so like kids wanted to like play with, you know, their Batmobile toy. So it was like it walked a really good line between both of those genres, both the adult and the kid genre, and I think that movie did it really well. And I'm not like, I don't think they were trying to do that, obviously, when you watch this movie, but that, for me as a dad reviewing this movie, like I want my son to be able to watch this movie with me at some point. And any superhero or Batman movies I want to watch with him, and I feel like I can't really do that with this movie with him until he's much older. So for me, that's kind of disappointing on that front. So I mentioned that there were things about this movie that I really liked and thought was interesting and thought was like a new take, at least cinematically, on the Batman character. And then there were things that I just like was like, what are they doing? And I felt like that theme was constant throughout this movie, where, and I think the biggest part of that is with the realism of this character. So especially in the beginning, the first hour, maybe even hour and a half of this movie, when you're watching it, you're thinking like, okay, this is like a cool take, because what's going on here with this Batman character is you could actually see legitimately if some rich dude wanted to do this, like that could really happen. Like he's dressed up as Batman, but then like he must take his suit off real quick, shove it in a backpack, and he's riding around on a motorbike, and then like maybe stops and puts it back on or something. He's not getting around like with shooting like the hooks and going up a lot early in the movie. He's not doing that. He's not driving the Batmobile throughout the whole movie. Again, that's going to come later. But you're sitting there and you're thinking like, okay, this is a cool take. When he's getting into fights, he's not using like these high-tech gadgets. He's like fist fighting, and he's kicking butt, and it's cool. He's taking bullets. That's a little unrealistic, even with the best armor you can buy, right? But it like does this really cool job of like walking this line of being like, okay, this is like the most realistic version of Batman we've ever seen, and I'm kind of digging it. So the scene that really like where you really start jumping out of this realistic version of Batman, and it's so, I'm just sitting there shaking my head throughout the whole thing. So the again, it's like an hour and a half or so into the movie. I didn't mark down an official timestamp, but gets taken into the police headquarters, and like they're gonna hold him there. Commissioner Gordon helps him escape, and so he's running away from all the police officers trying to capture him, and he like gets to the top of the building, or he's at the top of the building, whatever, and then he like just out of nowhere, the bat suit is also a wingsuit. Who knew? It's also like one of those skydiving wingsuits, and he jumps off, base jumps off the building, and is just wingsuiting his way through Gotham City. And then he so that seems unrealistic, right? Especially the fact that, okay, he's been wearing this bat suit the whole time, but it's really a wingsuit. It just transformed. Come on, that's pretty dumb. I've seen those wingsuits in real life before. It'd be kind of hard to hide them and only make them visible when necessary, right? But whatever. Put that aside. The end of that scene, he's coming down. He's not really wingsuiting that well, so that kind of puts it into a little bit more of a realistic perception, right? He's not a pro at it. Good enough to not kill himself, I guess, but then he comes down and he gets into this weird crash. He hits the top of was it a bus maybe, or a train? I don't remember. And going at a super high speed, bounces off, and you're like, oh man, that must have messed him up, right? And realistically, it would have messed anybody up pretty darn good, if not killed them. And he just kind of gets up and walks it off. And it's like, come on, you were being so good with the realism, the Batman, and then you throw this at us halfway through the movie. What are you trying to do here? What type of movie are you trying to make? Further on that theme of what type of movie are you trying to make, I was constantly asking myself this the entire time I'm watching it. What type of movie did they want this to be? At certain points, it felt like I'm watching a Dick Tracy movie. Batman or Robert Pattinson, Bruce Wayne, whatever, is narrating the thing, kind of reading aloud from his diary, Dick Tracy style, right? Other times it felt a little bit like a buddy cop movie when he and Catwoman are working together. The Riddler character really kind of reminded me of the villain from Seven. So it's trying to be Seven. At certain points, it felt like I was watching a Saw movie. At other points, when emo Bruce Wayne comes out, I feel like I'm watching Little Nicky. I'm like, is this Bruce Wayne or is this Little Nicky? What's going on here? Or is he the emo kid from South Park? What? What are we doing? And then there was a big organized crime aspect to this movie. So at certain points, it felt almost watching, I was watching a Goodfellas or Casino or something. So it was just not that you have to just be one thing all the time, but pick a lane and stay in it. What it was just, it just really struck me as weird. And I'm not generally an overly critical movie watcher. When I watch movies, I throw the reality thing out the window. I like them to be based in a little bit of reality. I've always liked my superhero movies to be a little bit realistic, but at the end of the day, you're watching a superhero movie and it's not going to be. So I can suspend my belief in reality for those purposes. So I'm usually not this critical, but I just felt like they must have, it just must have been that obviously noticeable for me to just be so put off by it. Am I the only one? Anybody else feel this way? Let me know in the comments below if you kind of felt the same way. Another thing that struck me as kind of strange about this movie was the dynamic between Batman and Catwoman. Now, let me just say, Zoe Kravitz killed it. She was awesome. But the actual there was they were trying to build this romance, I think, between Batman and Catwoman, and it just fell flat to me. I didn't believe it. There's There was a couple of kiss scenes that just felt awkward. That just felt forced almost. Like the two actors, and I don't think it was their acting, but there was just like no chemistry between them, at least that I picked up on. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but like I felt there was no chemistry between them, and that like this narrative of them, they're just trying to this romantic dynamic between them just wasn't there. It was definitely forced. I thought that was super weird. And on top of that, the reason that Selina Kyle or Catwoman is kind of gets mixed up with Batman is because they never say, but presumably her girlfriend is murdered and she's trying to figure that thing out. So while she's like grieving and then like trying to figure out what happened to her girlfriend, she's like then like just falls for this Batman guy. Like it was just really awkward and weird. I don't know. I thought that there was absolutely no rhyme or reason between that. Like you could have had them working together exactly the way that they did without that at all. Like there didn't need to be any romance there, or like have it be all whatever. But it didn't work. It was just super weird. There was a couple of villains in this movie, but like kind of the main one focused in this movie was the Riddler, played by Paul Dano, and like in the beginning I'm watching this, I'm like, this is really dumb. I hated the mask that he was wearing, but as the movie was going on, I kind of understood it a little bit more, and I got the idea of that character a little bit more, and I thought, okay, this is actually a pretty cool take on the Riddler, and I think that maybe is like one of the things that this movie does best is kind of explore that character and his motivation, and also there's this dynamic between that character and the Batman, almost being like basically the same thing, just with different motivations, pretty much similar motivations, but they view themselves differently, I guess. So I thought the building of that character that they did with the Riddler was actually really good. One of the best things that this movie did. A very interesting take on the character of the Riddler, and I thought that it was done really well, and it was acted very well as well. And I absolutely like that. Probably for the whole movie is the best thing in the whole movie for me. And there was the kind of organized crime gangster element to this movie, where you had the Penguin, who's kind of like this mid-level crime boss below the big boss of Carmine Falcone. Falcone, played by John Turturro. He was awesome, very, very good, played it well. And then the Penguin was played by Colin Farrell, and like the whole time I'm seeing it, I'm like, how is that Colin Farrell? Whatever they did to him to make him into the Penguin, like you had no idea it was Colin Farrell. And I also kind of liked the take that they had on the Penguin character. He wasn't as like kind of campy as the Danny DeVito Penguin or as other Penguins we've seen in the past, whether it's on the old TV show or wherever, cartoons, what have you. I thought this was a pretty cool, realistic interpretation of what like this character could have been, and I really liked that. I thought that was cool, and Colin Farrell knocked it out of the park with that. So I thought that was cool too. But ultimately, that character had very little to do with anything in the movie other than Batman kind of taking a wrong lead as he's kind of investigating what the Riddler's after. So that was kind of weird, the way that he was kind of used and not used, but at the end of the day, I was, no issues with that character. I thought it was cool. Just to kind of run through the rest of the casting, Jeffrey Wright was Commissioner Gordon, and I thought he played the role really well. The writing for Commissioner Gordon, I guess he wasn't Commissioner yet, my bad. Jim Gordon, the writing for that character I thought was kind of odd. Like, again, other than kind of being that link between the PD and Batman, Gordon really wasn't there to do anything other than keep Batman from getting arrested by the PD and letting Batman in to investigate these crimes. But other than that, like, he really didn't play any larger role. Like, he I don't know. It just, the acting was great. The actual story of the character was meh. Andy Serkis played Alfred, and I thought he actually did a really good job in that role. That version of Alfred reminded me a lot of the Alfred from the Gotham TV show, which I like. I like both versions of that Alfred. So I thought Andy Serkis was really good in that role as well. Visually, for me, this movie was both like really well shot and also too dark. Like, I get that this is a dark movie, and a lot of your scenes are going to be dark, and then most of it takes place at night. A lot of rain scenes. I get it, but you don't have to, like, I don't know. Give me some light. Give me something. It doesn't even have to be a lot. Just give me a little bit. Give me something that's not just dark and brooding the whole time. And some of the scenes, though, were like just beautiful. Like, beautiful cinematography. Whoever was in charge of that, like, just knocked it out of the park. But I have to say, it felt a little much at sometimes too. Like, it felt like they were trying to, like, win an award for the way they were shooting this movie. It felt a little forced. It was still beautiful, though. It was still a beautifully shot movie. I thought the music used in the movie was really well done. It wasn't like overly ambitious, but like, and it was a lot of the same kind of theme to the music, but I liked it. I thought it fit really well. So whoever did the music for this, cheers to you. I had my other big problem with this movie, my other beef with this movie, besides that kind of pick a lane, that back and forth that I was feeling this movie was doing, is the whole I am vengeance idea. I thought that was a little cringe. I thought it was a little cringe because, so one of the criminals early in the movie, like, asks, "Who are you?" and he says, "I am vengeance." And like, that's supposed to be like what strikes fear in all these criminals, right? And what hopefully prevents them from committing further crimes is this idea that Batman vengeance is out there and will take care of you. But then, like, throughout the movie, Catwoman calls him vengeance. And it's just super awkward. Like, it's downright dumb. Like, she's not like, "Hey, Batman, come here." She's like, "Hey, vengeance, what do you think about this? Hey, vengeance, blah, blah, blah." It's like, come on. I thought that was dumb. Now, there was a reason for that, and that's, that plays out in one of the final scenes, where, one of the Riddler cronies, basically, he beats up and then unmasks, and Batman unmasks, and Batman looks at him and he says, "Who are you?" and then that crony says, "I am vengeance." So that led to that ultimate realization that, what he was doing wasn't working. It was actually doing the opposite. It was inspiring. That's why the Riddler thought that they were on the same side, right? That they were going after the same thing. So it was an important part of this overall storyline, and I get that, but it was just so cringe. Like, maybe, like, do it one time in the beginning like they did, bring it up again in the middle just to keep it fresh in your mind, and then have that reveal. But I didn't count how many times Catwoman called Batman vengeance. It was definitely more than once, though, and it was definitely unnecessary, and it was definitely cringe. So I absolutely hated that. I did not like that whatsoever. Okay, so at the end of the day, just to wrap up this review, what are my overall thoughts on this movie? If I were to rate this, I'm going to rate a couple different aspects of this movie, because I've barely talked about Robert Pattinson and the role, him taking on that Batman role. I'll get more into that in a minute. But to rate this movie, I figured I would do like a 0 to 5 star type system. But instead of stars for the movie, we all know that the 1991 version of Point Break is the perfect movie. So that's the gold standard of all movies. It's inarguable. So I'm going to rate this on the movie itself, The Batman, on a scale of 0 to 5 point breaks. At the end of the day, I kind of struggled back and forth. I thought about giving it 2.5 point breaks. I'm going to round up. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 point breaks. I thought, as kind of messy as it was and as back and forth as it was, and even despite all of the problems, it still gets 3 point breaks out of 5 because it does have an interesting take, on kind of a different take than we've seen, at least in the movies before, on this character of Batman. It's set up to where this is, you know, there's going to be sequels. This isn't going to be a standalone movie. And something I haven't mentioned yet is that early on you find out that this is kind of a early iteration of Batman, right? He's only 2 years into being Batman. So, and then he learns that big lesson, right? That he can't just be about vengeance. So moving forward in the sequels, you know, he's going to be kind of more, he's going to become more of a hero, you would think, at least. That's where they're going to go with this. Going to be more of a symbol of hope as opposed to a symbol of fear. At least that's kind of the overall theme of the movie. So I'll still give it a 3 out of 5 point breaks. If you're rating it in the scale of actual Batman movies, to me, the gold standard Batman movie is that 1989 Batman, Michael Keaton. That's the top. The Dark Knight, the 2 Dark Knight movies, not Batman Begins. I think Batman Begins is terrible. Fight me. But the 2 Christopher Nolan, the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight, the 2 Dark Knight movies, I think those are just under, especially the one with the Joker, so the middle movie there. So it's 1989 Michael Keaton Batman, the Dark Knight, the one with the Joker, then the one with Bane, then maybe Batman Returns, the other Michael Keaton movie. So I would put on a scale, obviously we know like Batman and Robin is the worst of the modern day Batman movies. I'm not going to go back to the Adam West Batmans, but of the modern movies, Batman and Robin probably the worst, right? So I would rank this movie just below Batman Begins. Again, not a huge fan of Batman Begins. I don't think it was terrible, but I didn't think it was great either. So I'll mark it just a notch below Batman Begins. As far as Robert Pattinson playing the character of Batman himself, I actually thought Pattinson made a really good Batman. I kind of liked this take of Batman. I kind of liked that he was just kind of all-encompassed. This was more of a detective Batman, although he figured out like the Riddler's clues, at least the easy clues, quickly, and but he also wasn't like an amazing detective because he didn't figure out his overall plan, right? He went down this wrong rabbit hole with the whole Joker, or with the whole Penguin thing too. So he wasn't necessarily like a great detective, but he was better than the cops, right? So I kind of liked that whole thing, and I kind of like the idea of this being a young version, young iteration, only 2 years into being this Batman character. Kind of like that whole take. So I thought the actual Batman was pretty good. If I were to rate it, again, with Michael Keaton's Batman being the gold standard. So if we're talking 0 to 5 of Michael Keaton Batmans, I'll give Pattinson 2.75 Michael Keaton Batmans out of 5. Not quite rounded up to 3. Obviously Michael Keaton's a gold standard. He's the best. Then we've got Christian Bale. Then probably Pattinson. Pattinson and Batfleck would maybe be interchangeable on this scale. with Kilmer just below and Clooney all the way at the bottom. One thing I really did appreciate about Pattinson's Batman though, and as good as Christian Bale was as Batman, Christian Bale's Batman voice was the worst, right? It was terrible. It's the worst thing about those movies. As fun as it is to like walk around and say, I'm Batman. as fun as that is to say, and as much as I miss that, that was the worst part of those movies to me. And I appreciate that Pattinson didn't really change his voice at all, because there was really a blurred line between, an intentional blurred line between Bruce Wayne and Batman. So that brings me to Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne. Now, it's hard to say of previous Batman movies who my favorite actual Bruce Wayne was. Maybe it was Bale. I liked kind of how he played that character. Maybe Keaton. Actually, I really like going back retro. I like an Adam West Bruce Wayne. So for the purposes of this scale, I'm gonna rate Pattinson on a scale of 0 to 5 Adam West Bruce Waynes. And actually give Pattinson a negative 10,000 Adam West Bruce Waynes for his portrayal as Bruce Wayne in this movie. I hated the whole emo take. I like the idea that like I'm into the recluse Bruce version of Bruce Wayne. Like I like that. I think that's cool. I like the fact that, you know, he never goes out. When would he have time, right, if he's doing all this work as Batman? He's never seen in the public eye, hardly ever. He's real pale because he doesn't get out in the daytime. Like I like that take of Bruce Wayne. Like I think that's cool. Just the whole emo thing though, I didn't get it. I don't know. I didn't get the whole Little Nicky aspect to that character. And the last thing I'm gonna rate about this movie is the Batmobile. Again, the gold standard in Batmobiles is from the 1989 Batman movie. That's inarguably the best Batmobile of all time. I actually really, as much as I like the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, the Christian Bale Batman movies, I wasn't a big fan of that Batmobile either. So, what I liked about this Batmobile, this version of it, is that it was realistic. You know, it was a realistic version of a car that a super rich dude could kind of amp up to make work for him. So I kind of dug that, although it didn't have the cool factor to me as like the actual, you know, the actual 1989 Batmobile had. Like that car was just awesome. That Batmobile was awesome. This Batmobile was just like, it's whatever. It's realistic, and I dig that about it. But at the end of the day, I'm not a car guy. Maybe if you're super into cars, like I could see maybe liking this version of the Batmobile a little bit more, and that car chase. I thought the car chase was just kind of meh. It like was going kind of cool at first. Again, because it walked that line between realism and not, and I felt like this could be like how a real car chase actually goes down. But then like at the like final last moment for Batman to not blow up, out of nowhere, one of those trucks that carry all the cars just happens to have an empty bed, and the ramp just happens to be at the right spot, and it has happened to turn it the right way so he could ramp out of the flames and the explosion, and that just was like, you went from being like really realistic to over the top. So if I'm giving it a ranking out of 0 to 5 1989 Batmobiles, I give this Batmobile a 2 out of 5 1989 Batmobiles. Alright, there you have it. That's my overall thoughts. What are your thoughts? Did you like this movie? Did you have similar thoughts as me, or am I completely wrong? Tell me. I don't care. You can tell me I'm wrong. Tell me in the comments. Tell me I'm right, though, if you agreed. What do you think? Did you agree with that as well? And lastly, if you're a regular viewer of this channel, if you're like a returning subscriber, do you like this idea of movie reviews while drinking bourbon? Is that like something I should do more of, or not? So let me know in the comments below. Cheers, everybody.